Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the PetaPixel Podcast. We're back in our homes after a, I don't know, technically kind of dodgy episode last week.
Dude, I was delirious during that recording. Like, I
had no recollection of it.
Yeah, no memory whatsoever.
I listened to it in audio form, and I'm like, I guess we said a few smart things, but generally it was all
There were 10
memory
minutes
hold.
where the lighting was beautiful. So, just watch those 10 minutes.
But you know what? It's not just us in our homes this week, because we've got a guest that we've been meaning to get on the show for quite a while. I think it was back when the G9 II first launched that I kept seeing comments on our videos like, Emily says blank. And I don't watch a lot of YouTube, so I'm like, who is this Emily who is clearly like the voice of a generation who is giving opinions on the latest Micro Four
And getting
Thirds
us in trouble.
cameras? But then I stumbled across Micro Four Nerds. Was a YouTube channel, and she was saying good and smart things episode after episode. And eventually we were lucky enough to meet Emily on some trips, and we were like, we got to get her on the show. So Emily Lowrey is here. Hi, Emily.
Hi, this is so cool. And I'm glad that you think I say smart things. That bodes
And
well.
good. Smart and good.
Smart and good. I like that.
It's easy to get one of the two, but getting both is very difficult.
That's
so
true.
Big thumbs up for that. And I think this is perfect because, I mean, it's outside of your classic wheelhouse, like your YouTube channel is, Micro Four Nerds, but we're going to do a little bit of L-mount talking because this is by far the most exciting month for L-mount since like the initial S1R launches like 6 years ago. So there's a lot to talk about, and we touched on it a little bit. We can talk about our recent experiences battling the elements in Norway. It should be a good time.
Yeah,
But
I've been promised stories about the weather in Norway. They've been holding back, trying to save it for the podcast, so I'm ready to hear now for the first time.
we're banking that heat for this episode.
I mean, we should say, though, Emily, I mean, besides your charming and rhyming but questionably limited naming choice that you chose for your channel, you are actually branching out into other camera gear now, right? You're expanding out of the Micro Four Thirds realm, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I like smaller form factored cameras in general, so I do a lot of Fujifilm and APS-C, and sort of to film, and when I do weddings, I shoot L-mount, so I'm a little bit of everything. I'm mostly sensor agnostic, despite my pun name.
So I do always like to kick things off with a question so everyone can get to know all of us and you a little bit better, Emily. And one thing we all have in common, guys, we're all on YouTube, right?
Yes.
That's something
Yes,
we do.
are.
Yeah.
Right now.
But I'm curious, if you could have a second, or in Chris's case, a third YouTube channel, what would the subject of that be?
Oh, so I briefly had a little second channel a couple of years ago, which was all about gaming handhelds, so like gaming emulation and things like that. It just got too busy to run them both, but that's what I do in a lot of my spare time.
You should just be like Emily with small things.
Yeah, that's
Because you
it.
got the tiny cameras, you got the tiny handheld systems. There's a running theme there, and just combine them.
That's it.
I mean, the two channels is already a lot, so I wouldn't want to start a third.
I can't do a second channel. So this is just a theoretical magical land where suddenly there's like 8 days in the week, and you've got time to drop an ep a week on your second channel.
I would probably do like a drunken parenting channel. I think that would be fun, because if you're that way anyways, and you're doing it anyways, you might as well just record it. So
Like if you're the parent of a drunk, or advice for drunk.
I mean, the drunken cooking channel was one of my favorites way back in the day. You got to go way back for that. That's YouTube gold. But a drunken parenting channel for sure. 100%. That would be my third. Luckily and thankfully, I don't have time for a third channel, so that's not going to happen.
Thank God. Jared.
Probably video games. I'm kind of with Emily, but I wouldn't do it specifically handhelds. I would do like video game reviews.
What's your hook?
That's probably why I don't have one. Is I don't have I can't be original. I've got nothing special about what I do. It's just be my takes on video games. Yeah, because I play a lot of them. I would like to play more, to be quite honest. But
Sorry, that's partially our fault.
Yeah.
What about playing video games but really drunk? That would I'd watch that.
Why is there so much alcohol involved?
Yeah.
in your
I'm just
stories,
saying, I'd
Chris?
watch that. That would be entertaining, wouldn't it?
I don't know. Would it? fumbling around trying to play like a stealth game, but intoxicated, I don't think I would.
I guess it depends what kind of drunk you are. Yeah.
So frustrating. Yeah. You know, I've thought about this a little bit, and there's a YouTuber, Patrick Tomaso, that we've met on some things, and he moved from doing camera reviews to doing movie essays and television essays, essentially. And I would never want to do that full time, but every once in a while, I'm like, I got some strong thoughts. I think I could put together a fairly compelling one. So that's something, if it's like if the time ever opened up or whatever, I would love to dip my toe into like why this cinematographer is bad or something. Maybe more positive spin for my first episode. But yeah.
Before you guys joined, I did try and do a video game review, but that video game was a photography video game. And I did a bunch of like screen recordings, gameplay recordings from my PlayStation, but the way that PlayStation encodes the video and like saves it, it was just like not working very well. Like the audio was like out of sync or whatever. So like I would have to get special equipment to actually record properly onto like an external device. But I did write a review of a video game.
Yeah, that was a conversation we were having like 2 years ago. Chris is reviewing probably the same game. I don't know.
It was I can't.
That was a long time ago.
The game was great. I powered through it in one weekend so that I could actually get the review out during like a reasonable period, since I didn't get an advance copy or anything. But I enjoyed doing that.
My video game channel just be like, sorry guys, no episode this week, too busy,
don't have
no
any
time to play. Yeah. Just I'll get back to Baldur's Gate 3 some century. I don't know when. We'll see.
All right. Well, moving past that excellent question, we have a.
Well, thank you, Jaron.
I don't know.
2 weeks ago, I said that because we skipped a week, we had too much news. Well, we didn't skip a week, and we still have too much news. A lot happened last week, so we need to get to that. So let's just get this podcast actually started.
As always, we love doing the PetaPixel podcast, and it is made possible because we're fantastic sponsors. And we've talked about this software before. I think it's incredibly useful. It is the Excire Foto app. Excire software solves a problem for a lot of photographers and creatives, and that is, how do I organize, manage, and maintain the thousands of images that come in our case, like every week. I mean, we have tons and tons of photos coming in. How do I keep that organized? Excire gives you a great way to do that. So this is workflow software. It lets you organize your photos. You can put in keywords. You can add tags. You can use their AI-based search prompt, which is fantastic. Find me all the photos of, I don't know, Emily Lowrey enjoying photography in Norway. And if you have any of those photos, it will come up with that. I mean, it's a really clever way to organize your photos. But it's also more powerful than that, because when you use Excire software, you're not using any sort of cloud-based upload your photos kind of organization. And that's a huge deal for everybody. We don't want our photos across multiple servers all over the place. We want to keep our photos secure. We want to make sure that they're ours and remain ours. And Excire software helps you do that because everything is done locally on your computer. So all of these things that you're doing, the searches, their culling tools. You can get rid of things like, do my photos have people with their eyes closed, or maybe they're not smiling? All of that work that's done with Excire is done on your computer. No privacy problems whatsoever. So it's fantastic that way. You always remain in control. There's two really good apps. So you've got the Excire Foto 2025 app. This is the standalone program. This does all the stuff that we're talking about. But you also have nearly all the same tools with Excire Search 2024. And this is a Lightroom plugin for Lightroom Classic. So depending on whatever your workflow is, Excire can help you to keep organized, stay on top of all your photos, cull everything that you don't need, and just really maintain that whole workflow to keep your job going as smooth as possible. Definitely want to check it out. It is not a subscription software. You can actually get a lifetime subscription with one purchase. And if you use special discount code PetaPixel, you'll get 15% off that price. Woo! So definitely check the links in the description below.
You know, I was checking and there was no culling option for like remove all photos with bad weather, or like our entire Norway trip would just be like gone, like hard erased from the hard drive. So that one is one we don't have to worry about, thankfully.
You keep teasing.
Which we'll talk about later.
Yeah,
Thanks, Excire.
Teasing this trip to Norway. I'm ready to hear about it, but we have to wait because we have more things to cover. We're going to start the news block with something that we have heard repeatedly from all of you who listen to the podcast, and it's that the Nikon Z6 III's N-Log had a flickering issue in high ISOs. Is that right, Jordan? I got that correct?
Yeah, and if you were shooting NRAW, same thing. Basically, anything where you're digging deep into the shadows there. It wasn't just a matter of noise showing up, which is inevitable, but actual exposure flickering in the shadows. Now, this is like very high ISOs or super heavy shadow pushes, but it's still annoying. It was one of my favorite cameras, if not my favorite camera last year. So anything like that where in the back of your mind you're like, I don't want to use this really dark situation because we could run into this. It's nice to know Nikon has released a new firmware, and yes, that does seem to be addressed in it.
This firmware was released last week, version 1.10. It fixes the problem, and the guy who originally reported the problem confirms it's fixed. So
posted a video.
It disappeared.
Nikon disappeared for bringing up the shadow flickering. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't think this was gonna be fixable, if I was going to be honest with you.
Yeah, I thought it was a sensor limitation because this was the first partially stacked sensor. Maybe there's some weirdness. You know, in Micro Four Thirds world, it might be like the GH6 where there was some weird stuff going on at low ISOs and it took entirely new cameras to fix it. I thought that might be the case here too, but they were able to do it in software. And just looking at the waveform, you can see the effect is dramatically reduced, if not eliminated. So that's great. This is why we complain about things. If you're like that, Z6 III videos seem to have kind of a negative bent to it. No, we love that camera, but we got to talk about the weirdness. So this is why. And now it's better for everyone, and we're heroes. Carry us while we're
heroes.
Yeah.
This next story though was pretty interesting. And Emily, do you review analog instant film? Have you been getting into that world?
I have dabbled. I have a few of the Instax and tiny printers and things. There's a theme of tiny things in my videos.
Because, there's so many instant cameras on the market. We still want to play with the new Fujifilm. I want to definitely get my hands on that. But we were just at CP Plus in Tokyo, Japan. And actually, one of the more interesting things that I saw was from TTArtisan. They have a new instant camera coming out. And it looks very much like an old school Zeiss Icon. They actually look quite beautiful. And TTArtisan, they're actually very good at machining like products to look very classic, very vintage, and they're always machined really well. So I am excited to play with this, to be honest. Like, it looks like it's a mini format, but just very cute, adorable colors, classic styling. Looks pretty neat.
It's really kind of what we want from Fujifilm in a lot of ways. Of course, this is, I think, their first camera.
Yeah, it is.
So I am very curious, how that's going to translate over from just making lenses.
Yeah.
But even looking at their lens progression, they've always been really good looking, but the build quality at the start was a little but they've come a huge way in the last few years. So yeah, hopefully they've got the expertise for this. I think, do we have to just do like an instant camera a month now? Is that the state of things, Jaron?
I don't know.
Well, we do have some time to wait. This isn't coming out until the fall. So,
oh, thank God.
Yeah, you've got time. But I do think this one's worth taking a look at because it is so different from the instant cameras that are available. And it just looks cool. Plus, it's available in red. And if something's available in red, I'm all in.
Oh, you love it?
Yeah.
What I find interesting is, this has mechanical lens in the front. So it looks like it's going to give us quite a bit of aperture control, maybe shutter speed control. I mean, you've got some manual things like 1 second to 300th of a second is the shutter speed range and stuff. Purely mechanical, no batteries required.
Now, isn't this entirely what you've been asking for, Chris, is more manual control to have more control over your instant pictures?
Well,
like, you keep saying
sure.
that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely I want something that goes beyond like just having a point and shoot instant camera. That being said, like this thing's got mechanical knob. It looks like maybe to extend the film and stuff too. Like it's going to be very interesting experience. It might be frustrating. I mean, it might take a lot of guessing and testing to get the right shots, although that is kind of always a part of the Instax experience. So I expect a lot of expensive film to be wasted making this thing work. Yeah, can't wait. But I mean, it looks sexy. It looks really cool. I'm pretty convinced it's going to have a very positive tactile kind of experience to it. So it was exciting, and you don't see stuff like this. So most of the instant cameras are always like plastic and very sort of cutesy, and this looks very classic and very sort of capable in a mechanical sense, in a manual sense. So.
Emily, do you want to check this thing out?
Very much, yeah. I think anything that has that sort of retro look, I'm really into. And I do really like a lot of the TTArtisan lenses as well. They have like the clicky aperture for photographers. Very heavy, very well built. Yeah, so I'm very excited to see what their cameras look like.
Emily,
So
how much
small
would you pay
but heavy
for
is
this?
the goal.
Oh, do you know? Yeah, small and heavy. Like I've got that little Brighton Star brass lens that's like tiny and it weighs like dark matter. It's terrible. How much would I pay for this? I don't actually know how much this is.
I know
So
there's no pricing released yet, so I'm curious. Like, what would be your maximum?
So I think I have my Instax camera as one of the more high-end ones, which was around £140. So maybe 200.
So you'd willingly pay more for this? Okay.
I think
am
it's
a
going to be
sucker, though.
expensive.
You think
I
so,
have a
Chris?
feeling it's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
I'm feeling
Yeah.
very 500 USD.
Yeah, I am
That's
too.
very high.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Especially-
I mean, it is made in China. They probably get the cost down, but yeah, $300 to $400 is my guess.
All right. Well, we'll see at some point when this is available. We'll take a look at it.
Let's move on to something that sucks.
Yeah. Why don't you take this,
Great.
Jordan? I put this on here because this seems like something you would care about.
Yeah, Technicolor. You know, we've been hearing that name for like 100 years. Actually had a film format for a while, and just a whole bunch of people working in the VFX industry under this giant banner of Technicolor. And it's been a rough stretch for the entire VFX industry for a little while here. We're hearing about like horrendous conditions, very low profits. Everyone's trying to kind of shortchange the people working on those to keep costs down, and it eventually hit Technicolor in a very, like, not a staggered way at all. They're just like, nope, that's it. We're going to get rid of
Shutter.
up to 10,000 creatives. Now they're saying like, all right, you're basically not working for the foreseeable future. We'll see. Like, it's not like Technicolor completely dissolved overnight. They may restructure and hire some of these people back. Who knows? But for the time being, just no notice, email like, hey, someone from your region's going to be getting in touch with you, let you know how severance is going to work. But rest assured, everybody working for Technicolor, you are all unemployed as of this moment.
Brutal.
And yeah, just the way that it came about with no warning and everything like that just really sucks. And it's just another example of like a bunch of very talented, creative people basically getting treated poorly by especially the filmmaking industry right now, which just seems like kind of an awful place to work this last decade. Any thoughts?
I've got nothing to add to that. I just thought I put it on here because I thought you would want to have your say.
Do you remember Technicolor back when the 5D2 came out? They were like, we have a Technicolor profile now available because 5D2s were getting used on projects, and basically they just desaturated and reduced the contrast like crazy without any access to a real log profile. And I found it always looked like garbage. But you know what? They were doing their best. This is not to diminish the mighty name of Technicolor with a century of wonderful work behind it. But that was the first thing I thought of when I heard Technicolor.
My only memory of Technicolor is its association with Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes. I just remember seeing that screen and it says
In stunning Technicolor.
Yeah. A lot of classic films too. Yeah.
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 All right. Moving
Sad.
on. Emily,
Where's
you
the
said
happy news?
Yeah, well, Emily was excited about this one, even though it's we'll see if this actually works. But Xiaomi says they want to make modular magnetic lenses for their phones, and I feel like we've seen this idea before.
It has
Certainly
failed over and over again. The definition of insanity, but I'm going to get one because it looks amazing.
So
Yeah.
you said before this started that you've got some people in this heritage of like attaching better optics to your phone. What are some of the things you've got back there that were perhaps failed?
Yeah, they're all a bit. The problem with them is if it's a peripheral, it's always tethered to whichever version of Android it can live up to. I've got the Olympus Air, which was beautiful, a little Micro Four Thirds in a tube. I've got the Sony one. There was like a zoom one and then an APS-C one, and I've got the Lumix CM1, which has an LX15 attached to an Android camera. It's
Lumix what? I gotta look this up. Lumix CM1.
CM1. I think Samsung did it first, but Lumix did it better.
Right. You got to find the DxO one as well. There was like a little type. You've got it?
That. Yeah.
Oh, you legend. That rules.
I love that.
Does.
Yeah, I shoot it without the camera. It shoots super raw. Like the low light on that is insanely good.
I remember playing with the Sony Q. I mean, we actually did review. I can't remember which model. I think it was probably the first one that came out. But that was 9 years ago. It was a long time ago. And we went to an anime festival here in Calgary. And, the benefit of having something so compact on a phone in a situation like that, where it's like it's like a trade show, for lack of a better term, it's convention. So there's lots of people around. It's nice to have this small little package, but it clipped on with a plastic holder. It felt very scary to use. Like I was going to drop it any moment.
Kept disconnecting.
Wi-Fi connection, especially back then, relying on a Wi-Fi connection directly to the phone, it was slow. The delay was horrible. So what's interesting about this, first, the fact, of course, that it's working with a dedicated phone. We have to appreciate that. This isn't designed to work with a whole bunch of phones. It's connecting directly to the Xiaomi phone. It's powered off of the phone through actual metal contacts, and it's using a laser-based communication system. I mean, the gist of it being that you're not dealing with Wi-Fi and the issue of maybe dropping signal. From what I've seen and what people have said early on it, there's basically no lag. Startup time is a little bit slow, which could be annoying. It's like a few seconds to get things going. But once it's going, it basically operates like any other lens on your phone. And so I think that was really the big downside with all these devices is you'd get better image quality, but while you're using them, it was always kind of a pain and slow and delayed. And this is basically just giving you a large sensor, essentially Micro Four Thirds sensor for your smartphone that works like a camera module right through the actual interface. So that's pretty cool.
I believe it has integrated cameras as well, right? So if you wanted a quick photograph, you've got your normal one. And then if you wanted a little bit of extra, you can put the extra lens on. Yeah, I think it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever use the Hasselblad attachment for Motorola phones?
Heck no.
No, we saw it at the last Photokina we went to. I remember behind glass, but we never got a chance to experience it because Motorola is not a thing in Canada.
Yes, not anymore.
I'll let you know. It was terrible.
I mean, this is a good point, though. This is a good point, though, Emily, because you're saying you're going to get one of these. So do you get Xiaomi phones in the UK?
It's a good point. I don't even know if we have the Google Play Store with them. So It might be getting it for reviewing purposes. Like I have the Yongnuo Micro Four Thirds camera, which I don't think you can get in the UK, which is quite a stressful user experience.
And that's the thing, right? Like when we talk about smartphones, because we come across this a lot, there's all these interesting phones and we do our reviews and people are like, oh, hey, what about this? What about that? Why aren't you reviewing this and that? It's like a lot of this stuff isn't available in the North American market. So it's hard for us to get our hands on, or to review it is limited for our audience, at least our North American audience. So it looks cool. I'd like to play with it.
Well, we'll see. All right, let's move on to Peak Design's latest product that Chris Niccolls has personally used.
It rolls.
And did you say
it doesn't roll? It rolls.
It rolls.
It rolls. Yes. Peak Design has announced a new roller bag that is designed from the wheels up for traveling creative professionals. Chris, you've used it on 2 major international trips. Why don't you tell us your thoughts?
It's great. So this is the Pro Roller Carry-On is the name of it. First off, it's incredibly lightweight. So I'm not that I really noticed. You get handles on all four sides. I love that. So you're trying to get it out of overhead storage. You can grab it from any direction, even the wheels. But the lightweight really helps. And that's thanks largely to a carbon fiber handle system. Super slick. It doesn't rattle or flex like your classic aluminum roller, multi-part roller thing would. You know, the tent poles that we normally use to pull our bags. So it's very rigid, very lightweight, very solid. I like the fact that it's basically just one big door that opens in the front, but you've got these tethers you can set. You can adjust it so that when the door opens, it doesn't flop out completely on the ground if you don't want it to. You can actually adjust how far it will open up. You get a laptop storage in the front, but also inside as well, if you're more comfortable with that. And yeah, it has a camera module with all the usual divisible dividers we're used to, but I took that out and just used it as a travel case. It's got tons of space in there. It is expensive, no doubt, but everything felt incredibly high quality. I love the functionality of it. It was actually very easy. The rollers are quite wide to the extreme corners of the bag, so it has more stability. I felt like if I had to run in an airport or even with a heavy camera bag on top, making it really top heavy, it didn't tip very easily. So like fantastic, ultimate roller bag I've ever used. My only criticism of it would be that it is a little bit taller than other roller bags. So for carry-on, yes, but there are situations where it's a little bit like 1.5 inches taller than other roller bags. So some overhead carry, if you want to put it wheels in first, it doesn't always fit and close with the door. But in most situations, I found it great. And again, really nice to travel out of. Pristine, beautiful.
And this I saw, like, if you are tight for vertical space, you can actually remove the wheels. Is that easy to do, or is it a pain?
I haven't tried removing the wheels. Yeah, I don't think I would worry about. But yes, you can if you want it to be absolute international carry-on capable.
I will say you mentioned the price. It's $600 for this.
Oh, sure.
That's very expensive.
Yeah.
For luggage.
But it's the greatest roller bag you'll ever use. So yeah. I'm fortunate I got to try it.
Okay.
So that's like an TTArtisan's instant camera potentially.
But you know what? I will say this, like, I'm cheap. I'm not one to spend money. Like if I was buying a roller case, I would just go on Amazon and buy whatever the cheapest garbage is, right? And undoubtedly, it's always a game of, well, how long is this going to last? You know, I like to gamble that way. Maybe I get one trip out of it. Maybe I'll get 3. I don't know. And I've had, bags where the corner gets crushed in or the wheels crack or whatever. This seems pretty rugged. I mean, even the door that opens up, most roller bags you would have, it's just held by the zipper. This actually has latches, pinned latches, hinges on the bottom of it for the door. So, you have that security that even if you yank it by the thing, you're not putting any stress on stitch seams. You're not putting any stress on zippers. And then functionality wise, when you're traveling, if it's making everything more convenient and less stressful, I mean, maybe that's worth some extra money. So
can't put a value on that.
There are,
I mean, you can. It's $600. It's you can put a value on it, but it might be worth it. And if you travel a lot, 100%.
All right. Let's move into. We've had these for the past few weeks. We have a block of news from one company. Last time I think it was the Nikon block. The time before that it was the Canon block. This week we have the Sigma block because there's stuff to talk about in addition to what we may have mentioned last week or what you may have read. Sigma wants to make a serious camera. This was mentioned in the podcast last week, but I kind of wanted to call this out because Chris thought this was super interesting. While we were chatting with Kazuri Yamaki, the CEO of Sigma, he said that he had more dreams for cameras than beyond the BF, which is, I would say, the opposite of a serious camera.
Yes.
And he pointed to their new 300 to 600. Well, he actually put his hands on, he patted it, and he said he wants to make a camera that was worthy of that lens. So what do you guys think that means?
I think it's pretty obvious, like looking at a super telephoto, that's for sports and wildlife, and those are the most demanding types of photography. So it's going to have to be a very professional or enthusiast-oriented one. But the big thing that he didn't mention, and no one really did when the BF came out, is the previous versions, the FP, FPL, had bad autofocus. Even like single point, slapping it right on top of your subject, it's sometimes like, nah, I don't think I'm gonna go over here. Where the BF is a massive improvement. Like with the tracking, you could see it following not just things it was specifically trained for, which cameras are getting pretty good at, but just random objects. It would just hang on to them surprisingly well. So I do think there's already the R&D going on under the surface for a much more advanced camera, even if like the BF isn't necessarily like the place I would really promote like autofocus that can handle fast moving subjects, but no mechanical shutter. So it might look weird, you know.
Emily, did you play with any of the older Sigma cameras like the FP, the FPL, the Quattros?
Yeah, I did.
Of course.
I've had a tinker with the FPL. It's one of the smallest full frame cameras. Of course, it's on my channel. I really like how Sigma do the simplicity in the menus. I think it's one of the cameras, I have a revolving door of cameras around here, and I really appreciate it when I can pick one up and it's just user friendly. So I'm very excited to see that with the way that they've engineered the BF. I'm excited. More the merrier in the L-mount alliance, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I would go the opposite because I've said this before. I hate their cameras. I really do. Like, I've for a long time, like Sigma have this, you gotta give them credit because Sigma just don't care what other people think, right? I mean, when they make a camera, they're like, this is what we want to do. We want it to be different than everybody else, even though there might be very good reasons why everybody else seems to follow a similar trajectory. They're like, to hell with that. Like, we're going to go our own direction and good luck. And I don't find their cameras very intuitive. I often find that their choices for the design structure, the grips, the lack of dials or extra dials or position of dials, I often find it just to be kind of weird and uncomfortable and strange. And like I've used the Quattros, I've used the Merrills, the DP1s, the 2s, the 3s, and like they've, as much as you can say like, oh, there's some cool stuff here, I always find them to just be mind-bogglingly strange to use. And the BF is no different. Yeah, and I mean, we'll see what your impressions are on the BF. I like the BF handling better than FP, but for me, that's not saying much because the FP is like a really, like, you got to dig a grave and put the FP down in the grave and bury it to get the bar for me as far as usability goes on that. So I really don't like them. I've always said it. I really don't. Like, it's funny, we would use
Say
the FPL.
What you really mean.
Yeah,
okay.
Tell us how you really feel.
Here we go. We would use the FPL to do our lens test for L mount because it's a big sensor, 60 megapixels, great image quality, great for testing. Jordan will attest every time it came to testing an L mount lens, and I had to pull out the FPL to do it. I wanted to just end things. I just wanted to start my drunken parenting channel and just quit photography altogether. It was that bad. Anyways, I think
it was like drop off the lens with a 6-pack for Chris. Like, buddy, I know you're going to need this. I'm sorry. Go shoot that chart.
So sad. So, and it was neat. We got to go to Aizu, Japan, which is a really cool honor. We got to see the factory. That was really interesting. And then the showroom, and you get to see all the old cameras and all the Sigma DP1, DSLRs and stuff, really weird stuff that we all sold back in the day. And, and those cameras are a bit more conventional and stuff. And so anyways, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I sincerely hope that if Sigma is going to make a more serious camera that will start taking advantage of these lenses, and they'll make it an L mount, I'm sure they're going to, they got rid of their own proprietary mount a long time ago. I sincerely hope that they make it a user-friendly experience and something that professional photographers will be used to and will expect. While at the same time, I'm sure it will have their own touch of uniqueness and madness. Yeah, and weirdness. But I hope that it's comfortable to hold. I hope that it's a nice user interface. And I hope that it's customizable and has enough command dial structure to really work for working professionals. We shall see.
There was a note in the comments from someone that's like, it's very difficult for a company not named Canon, Sony, or Nikon to compete in this type of high-end enthusiast space. But L-mount is in dire need of a sports camera. Mm-hmm. It has hybrids, it has high resolution, it has luxury. It doesn't really have super high-end enthusiast sport in action. So there is a gap to fill there for those who shoot in L mount, and it would make L mount more appealing to more people. So like, it's not like there's not a place for this. I also do not feel like we're anywhere close to seeing this from Sigma. Like, he talked about it as like this idea, and even if it's farther along than that, and you take it as like how Japanese executives talk about their products, still years away from seeing something like this. Maybe, and it definitely can't be Foveon. It needs to be a Bayer sensor. So I want to see it too, but I'm not like thinking it's coming in this like current generation.
They'll launch it with the 3-600 version 2.
Yeah, maybe.
It was still a cool thing to hear a CEO say. And I mean, he's, Kazuto Yamaki-san is a dreamer, and he's very, like, he gets an idea in his head and he brings it to fruition, and that's really cool. You got to respect it. So we'll see what it's like.
Well, he has a habit of just like saying stuff.
Love it. Which is best character trait.
So this happened. It wasn't with our interview. This happened during, he had a presentation at their CP Plus booth, which we didn't get to see. But he got up there and said, just blurted it out, there's another 35 millimeter coming. A new 35 millimeter f1.2 art prime lens is supposedly on its way. I wonder if his marketing and PR group knew that he was going to just say it.
They must be the most frustrated marketing team in the world. Just like he's going to give an interview. What is he going to say? He'll say anything.
Yeah, like he's so constrained. Last year at CP Plus when I interviewed him, and also this year when we interviewed him at their headquarters, he just walks in and there's nobody else in the room. It's just us and him, and he can just say things. And
there's just someone in the back rubbing their temples.
So he said they're developing a second version of the 35-1.2 Prime for full frame mirrorless cameras, and when he says it like that, it sounds like it's probably soon.
So Emily, I mean, we've talked quite a bit, and then we got to meet in person in Norway, which is great, and hang out. And you seem very lovely, but let's see if our friendship can last. What do you think about 35 millimeter lenses in general? And are you excited about this?
I when I shoot weddings, I do a 35-85 combo. So I love it professionally. For my own work, I would like something a little bit longer, like 40 mil or 50 mil. So I'm in both camps. How diplomatic was that?
That was very diplomatic.
Well,
we can continue the podcast.
He didn't straight up say that you don't like 35, so Chris isn't fully pleased. But yeah,
that's okay. I'll get over it.
You're gonna. If this comes out this year, which I'm gonna bet it comes out not only this year, but like in the first half of this year. Congratulations, Chris! You get to shoot with yet another 35 millimeter.
How many 35 millimeter lenses do I have to review this year? Like it feels
we're gonna hit 6 very soon, which is awesome. So this lens I find kind of interesting. The 35-1.2 is one of the only Sigma lenses from the last decade, basically, that we never reviewed. And it has a fairly good reputation, but not quite as sterling as some of their other primes. Sorry?
Why didn't you review it? Chris said for a fairly good reason. What was the reason?
Well, I didn't want to. No, I don't know. Just it slipped under the radar.
How?
Yeah,
it's a Sigma lens.
I think it was one of those times we had multiple launches and we're like, oh, we'll get to that. And we never got to it. So I'm looking forward to this a lot. I mean, Chris even mentioned on the a recent Nikon 35-1.2, he's like, if you get that super shallow depth of field on a 35, you can get some cracking images.
I actually don't mind it.
Oh.
So that's it. Maybe I just have like really highbrow, prestigious taste when it comes to 35 millimeters. Like it must be 1.2 or get it out of my face. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. It can deliver a very good look, and it makes sense that Sigma would start with a 35 because that was the original art, and of course everybody loves them except me. So I am, because it's a 1.2, and that demands very good optical performance at that aperture to make sense. I am actually, I won't say excited. I am willing to see it and play with it.
And it's your job.
And it's my job. Yeah, so I must.
Emily, how much do you know about the construction of the BF? Like, did you do any research or read about like how they made it?
Yes, this tickles my nerd buttons. I've got the Leica Type T701, which is also made out of like one piece of aluminium.
You have that?
I have that. Oh yeah, I've got a whole host of things in my camera museum.
So cool.
And that was my first thought when I saw the BF. It's only like a couple that they can make in a day, isn't it? It's like it's really low production because it's so hard to make.
So we heard a few different takes on this. The one that I've went with because that's what the floor manager looked me into the soul, the windows of my soul, and I asked him to confirm it twice, and he said this: they can make just 9 because 9 BF cameras a day. They have 6 machines that we looked at. We didn't lay hands on them, but we came within inches of these machines and looked inside as they were carving BFs in there while we were walking through. It's just that these machines are extremely expensive. They're also very big, and they take a long time to carve something out of a solid block of metal, and they just simply can't make that many a day. So I think what's most exciting to me about this is that they were able to do this, a 9 per day maximum build, and they still only charge $2,000 for it. It's like they want people to have it, but
not too many.
It's just fascinating to me because how much was that Leica, Emily, when it was brand new?
When it was new, it was a lot more than 2,000, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I was thinking 3.
Yeah, it's one of them that comes in the box with the drawers and also an L mount camera. Very, very nice.
Yeah, it was insanely unpopular. Yeah, but I really liked it, and I haven't touched one in a long time. But I remember having a really good experience with it because if I'm not mistaken, Emily, because of course you've played with it more recently, the touch interface is really nice. It's largely touch interface, as I remember. But couldn't you move the buttons around, the icons on the touchscreen and stuff, and customize it?
Yeah, it's a very different way compared to other Leicas. It was supposed to be like if a smartphone and a brick of aluminium had a baby. Yeah. It's so cool. Yeah. I think I'm going to get you to. I've got you to get the GM5 now, so this is my next one. You want a 701?
I would, yeah. Well, we drew that comparison, of course, looking at the BF, and that it does remind you of the Leica, not just because of the sort of odd compact nature of it. I mean, you got to remember the time when the T series came out, like that was so strange for Leica to do that. So strange, right? And a lot of other companies are trying to do these really high-end point and shoot or point and shoot, air quotes, compact mirrorless cameras. And so it was a very unique way of shooting, but I enjoyed that experience. And then the BF is kind of a similar idea where it's going a different direction. It wants you to work in a different way. But yeah, the body immediately you draw similarities to because they're so sharply cut and beautifully machined and just like clean, pristine kind of look. And it is very eye-catching, absolutely. And that's because they use 5-axis CNC machines, which are very expensive and very fancy.
All right, the last thing to mention here before we can close the door on news, this is more just like a heads up. If you weren't able to get to Japan, which I understand, and if you don't live in the United Kingdom and can't make it to the photography show in London, if you'd like to see a BF camera in person, Sigma has a pop-up store that will open on March 7th. There we go. Yeah, March 7th.
Yeah, in New York. And it'll run through March 29th. It's located at 21 Spring Street in the Nolita neighborhood, and you can go and take a look at it. And I don't know what day it will be. I hope the calendar has since been updated. But Kazuto Yamaki is actually going to be physically here.
He's going to randomly announce 3 other projects that were not expected to be announced there.
I expect him to, if you're in New York and you can find out exactly what day Kazuto will be there, highly recommend it. He's awesome. Like he's super. Awesome. He will talk. You go up to him and talk to him. He'll be happy to talk to you. Like he's a very nice guy. So if you're in the New York area and you want to go see Sigma stuff, meet him. This is a worthwhile thing to go check out.
And the BF is easy to fall in love with at first glance, but it's really a camera that demands that you have to hold it and you have to use it. It's very much that user experience that will make or break what you think about the camera and if it's right for you. But as we was sort of alluded to, cost-wise, it's really actually quite reasonable. And I'm surprised by that, not only because of how prestigious it looks, but also how few they can make, as we've talked about. Yeah, I think this is more of a proof of concept than a money-making scheme, in this regard. Like, they really wanted to show a different direction that the company's going to go in. And and I feel like, I don't know exactly this, but I feel like Kazuto himself was like, I want the engineers to make me a camera that I would walk around with. Yeah. And dude is probably one of the most stylish people you ever meet. So I think that's a big part of this camera.
Yeah, he looks great in his suits, and he has many
Impeccable.
Suits. He looks great. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about L-mount. And Emily, I want to ask you, did Panasonic finally give photographers a camera that they should be pleased with and should use, do you think?
Oh, yes, I think so. I think there's a lot to love about the new S1R Mark II. I think the only thing, now that I've used it for a little bit longer, that I'm a little bit sad about is that the buffer size is quite small. So you have all these fancy burst modes. It does like 40 frames a second, but then the buffer only holds 70. So you got to be quite accurate in those 2 seconds.
Is this using CF Express? Can it clear that buffer with any speed?
It won't let you continuously shoot until there is space in the buffer. So yeah, you really hit the wall usually when you fill it up. But in terms of like the high res modes I've always felt are a little bit gimmicky on other cameras, but I was using it and it gives you something stupid like 175 megapixels. And I was cropping it in, and as long as you use a sharp enough lens, it is incredible the quality that you can get from that camera.
So the answer is yes. Photographers finally have an option on L-mount that they should feel comfortable using, even though Panasonic, they market this as a hybrid camera, because I don't think Panasonic will ever make not a hybrid camera.
No.
Well, you're paying the bills with L-mount cameras, like you were saying. So is this going to be like your primary camera on weddings moving forward, or
it is? For sure, because I do photo and video, and for photo the S5 II and the S5 IIX are wonderful. They get the job done, very accurate autofocus. But for video, I shoot a lot with 50p and 60p, so the APS-C crop drives me crazy, and that is like the biggest thing for me on the video side, to not have the crop to deal with on the S1R II.
I did think that was a funny thing when they did the announcement, and they're like, and it's now cropless in 50 and 60. There is a small crop, however. And it's like...
Wait, they said it just like that? It's cropless, but it's small.
Well, what they said was all manufacturers, and this is true, that a lot of manufacturers, if the crop is small enough, they'll just basically all agree to say there's no crop when there is like a small crop. Yes.
Yeah, it was full frame readout. They were trying to word it in every way other than there's a tiny little crop. Deal with it.
But it is very minor. It is very minor. I don't think it make or breaks the experience.
No, compared to
Emily,
APS-C.
How are you, Emily, on board? Well, how should I word this? I feel like Panasonic has, in a lot of ways, kind of let go of the photography world. And I know the S5 II. Perfectly capable camera, good value for the dollar, nice photos. I did like it. The autofocus was, of course, vastly improved from what we'd seen before. But, how do you feel about that whole concept of them sort of moving more video-centric versus photocentric? Do you agree with that?
I think it's always been in the DNA, even like on the Micro Four Thirds sides when we had the GH cameras. That was the moment when Lumix were kind of like, oh, this is our unique selling point. So I do think that's their niche within the market. But I do lament it a bit. If they brought out a photocentric version, which the S1R II was supposed to be that, really, wasn't it? And they've just thrown a load of good video stuff into it. Yeah, I don't know. They've kind of priced out the photographers that don't need the video side, perhaps. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
It doesn't cost them more to add video features, and you don't save money.
Yeah, they've
by
already
removing
developed them.
Yeah. So that's something that a lot of photographers that comment on the podcast don't fully seem to understand, is that you can ignore the video features if you want to, but them being there, you're not paying for them. They don't cost extra. So just ignore them if you don't want them.
Yeah, well, it prioritizes the sensors that they pick, because like the S1R, Chris and I have said, was their last truly photocentric camera. Yeah. And it wasn't because they scaled back video features. It's because that sensor was bad for video. Where I think Panasonic going forward, they're just like, look, we're not going to look at a sensor unless it's going to give us some pretty capable hybrid results as well, which is why we're seeing this.
I mean, technically this sensor, I mean, it is good for video. Actually, Jordan's very excited using this for video work. But technically it's not ideal for video, right? I mean, insofar as a stack sensor would certainly give you less rolling shutter, right? Some advantages in that regard. For photography, it would make the electronic shutter more usable, right? I mean, as Emily stated, the buffer is quite small on this. If you're shooting 40 frames per second, it's basically, it's just one and done, and then you're waiting. So I like that they went with a non-stack sensor. I think that keeps the cost down on this camera. The image quality is very high. The dynamic range is great. Not that the weather let us push dynamic range, but it is very good image quality. To me, this is an 8 or 9 frame per second shooting camera, which is fine for some people to do sports action. I think for weddings, it'd be ideal. I mean, I think that's plenty, right, Emily?
Yeah, definitely.
Is it going to win people over for wildlife photography and stuff like the Z8 does? No, I don't think so. But it is nice to see a camera that's quite photocentric. I would happily use it again for stuff. And actually, it will be nice if we can hold on to one to use for lens testing, so I don't have to touch that FPL ever again. So I'm really excited for that. And the image quality is there. It's a good sensor for that.
I have a Jordan question, actually, because I don't quite understand, and you've touched on this, Chris. Is this sensor, as you said, is not necessarily ideal for video compared to other sensors that might exist? So in my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, the S5 IIX sensor, if you were to just look at that sensor alone, should be better for video, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's also the age of that sensor. Like, that sensor originally came out with the Sony A7 III, which, if you've been watching our show for context, that was the first video we did for DP Review. So that's 2 channels ago now. And we're still having cameras. I mean, the BF is most likely, I mean, it's tough to confirm exactly, but is a variant of that same sensor as well. And it's, as a result, quite slow. Like Emily was saying, you're having to crop in if you want to shoot 4K 60.
And this sensor is also slow, right?
Yeah.
So, but you prefer it.
So this gives you the option, essentially. So you're picking between, do you want the faster readout so you can get the 4K 60 with the very minimal crop on there, or you can switch it to dynamic range priority, which is going to get you extended highlight information, but the readout speed drops to actually quite similar to the S5 2X. So that gives you basically a little flexibility, but it's not a best of both worlds in the way that like the stacked sensors in the Z8, R5 II, it's just like, yeah, you want speed and dynamic range, you get both in video mode.
And that's typically, you think they didn't do it because, one, maybe they didn't have access to it on the sensor, which, by the way, is the sensor that's used on the Inspire and on the Ronin 4D,
Ronin
right?
4D 8K, yes.
Yeah,
Again, unconfirmed, but very wink-winky when we were at the event. I think you could confirm that, Emily.
Yes.
Yeah, tapping the nose. So it just seems odd to me that a higher resolution sensor that should be slow and has lots and could have a lot of rolling shutter, which you said it does have rolling shutter issue. Yep. It's better than a camera that seemingly was developed with video primarily in mind.
Yeah, but with a very old sensor.
Yeah.
And as I said at the end of ours, like this leaves the door wide open for an S1 II. I think it is pretty straightforward now. Slap
with a stack sensor
so you
in
take
there.
the same sensor and you stack it?
Yeah, you could take the same one, or, if you can get your hands on one of those little Z8 sensors, that'd be pretty sweet. I think they're basically... Panasonic's not doing their own sensor fabrication, so it's whatever stacked sensor becomes available to them, and there's not a lot of options out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit. I love the Canon R5 Mark II. Great camera. I thought it was fantastic. It's pricey. The Nikon Z8, fantastic camera. I mean, it's universally loved. It's a jack of all trades, and it is good value for the dollar, but still more expensive, right? So do you feel like if a prospective full-frame buyer was coming to the market, the S1R II, does it have appeal for somebody to look at that and be like, well, I can save a little bit of money. I can get L-mount lenses. There's lots of choices for L-mount lenses. That's another strength. You go Nikon or Canon, you're stuck with Nikon and Canon glass, which can often be quite pricey. Here you could get Sigma lenses, you get a Panasonic lens, you got lots of choices for L-mount. So do you feel like that's a good entry point now for people to get into full frame? Will this win over photographers and hybrid shooters that are coming into the market now?
I think that's a big element, but I think another element from Lumix's point of view is if you do get people on board via the S5 or the S5 II, up until now there hasn't been a progression for the existing users either. So I think it needed to have like a bit of runway for people to progress through the range, and that is what this is as well. I think it will get a lot of new users to the system. I see a lot of wedding photographers taking this on board for sure, from my experience anyway. But I think a lot of people that have had the S5 II for a few years and maybe they're outgrowing it, this is where they're going to go, which I think is quite clever.
I think it'd be a brilliant landscape camera as well. I think that's an area where it'll really excel, especially with that handheld high res and the fact that you can just abuse the hell out of this thing. I mean, we've teased it. Like, do we want to talk about Norway conditions?
Please. I would like to know exactly how this trip went and why you guys were saying that it was weather-wise just terrible.
I have a unique bit of context to this because I went to Tromsø in December, which was when the event was originally supposed to be. And it was a winter wonderland. It was not windy. Everything was snowy. It was absolutely beautiful. And then I came back 2 months later for this event, and the reindeers were in mud. I got sand blasted over the bridge with 80-mile-an-hour winds. It was raining sideways. I think I was the only person on the trip that actually saw snow because I had the latest flight home and it actually cleared up on the final day. But everybody else, unfortunately, got the misery.
Yeah, it was funny. I mean, we arrived, it was a 2-day trip. It was also 2 days of travel. That was rough, no doubt. But, easier for you guys from the UK. But we arrived, and the first thing Sean Robinson, who's the fantastic staff at Lumix, says to me, he's like, "Oh, you guys should have been here yesterday. The sunset was incredible."
Great, that's useful. Like, thanks, Sean.
Fantastic, sounds great. And then, I mean, it was for those 2 days just rough weather, cloudy. We barely saw, I saw a sliver of sun when we were kind of navigating the fjords in the boat, like a sliver. It was gone pretty quickly. But it was rough and not ideal conditions for testing photography. And I mean, like, it's when it's that cold and wet. As Canadians, we're used to it, but still, like that was trying, and hard to photograph. But that camera took so much abuse. I've never seen a Panasonic camera or used a Panasonic camera in that kind of environment. So you never know exactly how it's going to stand up, and it stood up incredibly well. Like that thing was soaking wet, brutalized. Water got on the sensor. Like it was just, So, anyways, they can take abuse and they can handle it, and I was really impressed by that. You can't control the weather, unfortunately. Still had a really good time, but those are rough conditions.
For context, our microphones were lasting, I would say, like 25 minutes or so.
What's a normal length of time? Hours, right?
We usually get like 6 hours on the Sennheisers we were using. So we had to switch over to Rhodes halfway through, which seemed to be able to handle inclement weather quite a bit better than those. And then the other thing too, on the boat, we had such a strategy of like, look, it's been so cold and windy, we haven't gotten to do any of Chris's talking points, but that's okay. We'll knock them out on the boat. As soon as we get on the boat, it starts raining again. So now everyone is clustered inside in the loudest imaginable room. Shouting over top of each other. That was also quite unproductive. We wound up, I think I was just hiding beside the engine the next day trying to get stuff out. So just not, again, no one's fault, huge, thanks to Panasonic for giving us a chance to really test it. But for making videos, it was a very difficult experience. But it speaks well to that camera that it did actually survive it.
Yeah, I saw you guys filming in so many different places, and I photobombed you at least 5 times. I'm very sorry. I saw you in a yurt.
People were thrilled to see you in the comments. It's just like, that's Emily. It's like, good, we're going to get her on the pod, I swear.
Yeah, that place where we had the meal where the car park was just an ice rink, and you were filming outside. I'm like, if you don't end up falling over, that's very impressive.
I mean, luckily, like reindeer, Canadians are built for icy conditions. Our footing is... No, it's true. Our footing is solid. And I mean, I know that some people took some spills on that trip. I mean, but we're used to, the ice we can handle. I mean, honestly, the weather wasn't too bad either. It's just tough to shoot in, tough on the gear.
you say reindeer, but when we went there, even the reindeer, because it was raining and freezing. So they're even doing like the Bambi on the ice, like all legs are in completely different directions. And it's just like, do I want to get a wide shot of this cheer of these struggling reindeer? So there ended up being a lot of close-ups of their faces, not their struggles on the ice there.
It was supposed to be like Winter Wonderland with these beautiful animals, and it was just the most desolate, barren landscape.
You know what's funny
so funny
is like as you guys are describing what sounds to me like a very trying, exhausting, cold, and terrible experience, but your videos didn't particularly. Like, you conveyed that it was cold and wet, but I didn't feel like it was that bad. So you did a fantastic job hiding it.
That's called being professionals.
I was telling Chris that the whole time. Like, no, I swear this video is actually turning out. Like, it's gonna be decent. Just like, and you got some great photos on it. Just talking about the reindeer thing, I just want to also throw out, I didn't have room in my bag to like pack my winter clothing on the way home. So I sat in a smoky tent smelling like reindeer, and then took a
campfire.
9-hour flight back home, just like stinking up the entire airplane with that as well. So apologies to everyone who took that trip from Amsterdam back to Calgary. I apologize.
All right. Well, before moving on, there's one last thing I want to mention. And even though, like, Chris, you say it on video, like, hey, Panasonic took us here, that doesn't affect what we're doing or whatever. There seems to be some people have this notion that then Panasonic is also paying us cash money to be there and do this. I want to make it clear that none of these companies, none of them, pay us cash to come do these things. They don't. All they're doing is covering room and board. Like what you're describing there is called sponsored content, which would be extremely well labeled. This is not that. So like for those who seem to think that we're being paid off to say nice things about certain things when we go to different locations, we are not. So.
And you know, we get this a lot. Emily, I'm sure you get this all the time too, right? And it's like, watch the last Leica review that we did, and watch the last. Well, and this Sigma BF. I mean, watch the Sigma BF. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, if I was being paid to do it, then I did a really bad job of saying wonderful, glowing things about these products. Like everybody even said, like, you know, we do the Leica video, and everybody's like, oh, well, I guess don't expect Germany to ever fly you out again. And it's like, well, that's always been that way. We don't make these reviews based on, will we still get to have a nice hotel stay somewhere, right? We do these reviews because that's what we do, and we do them honestly and unbiasedly. And I've said this about the SL, the SL2, the SL3 now. Like, yeah, it has issues, and I'm not afraid to say it. And I'm not going to pick and choose. That doesn't make sense to say, oh, well, okay, well, Leica, I'll be honest, but I won't be with Canon or Nikon or Panasonic. That's ridiculous. So, yeah, and the Panasonic buffer isn't very good on the S1R II. We all said it. You know, the electronic shutter's got some issues with rolling shutter. Like, yeah, it's just the facts. It's the facts.
I'll also point out that these companies ask us to do these things, and they ask us even if we're not glowingly positive, because that's the point. Like, they know that we're trusted people that people listen to because we tell the truth. So
and Panasonic's always been good that way. So is Leica, for that matter. Yeah.
All right, guys.
What have you been up to?
What have you been up to? And in this segment, Emily, you get to promote yourself. You get to say what you're doing if you have anything to sell or want people to watch. This is the place to do it. So you go first. What have you been up to, and what should people care about?
So I did a full year of photo contests last year, a monthly one. It was free to enter, and there was loads of prizes, and I critique photographs, and it's just supposed to be a celebration of the community, and it's a great bit of fun. This year I'm doing them quarterly, so I can put a bit more effort into it and get some live streams and some guest judges. So yeah, if anybody wants to get involved with that, they just have to join my mailing list, and it's free. All abilities welcome. I just think it's a great way for us all to come together and talk about the photography a little bit more than sensors and techs and everything, you know. It's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Cool. Give me a link and I'll put it in the description below.
Amazing, I will do.
That people can sign
What's
up
the next couple videos you've got coming out?
Oh, so I'm going to Valencia for most of March with
Nice.
the OM system OM3. So I'm going to do some I want to do just like photography with this cool camera. Not an angle, just I want to go out and have fun and take photographs because I think I haven't done that in a long while because there's been so many new things coming out. And I want to really get to grips with the colour profiles that you can have on that camera as well. So yeah, I've got a couple of ideas in the pipeline.
Nice.
You did the Wallace fingers there. The Wallace cheese.
How many more I mean, you buy all these cameras, Emily. How many more cameras are you going to buy this year? What's your plan? Under 20? Under 25? What's your...
So I'm going to Japan in May and I'm saving up for another camera spree sort of video. I only came home with 3 last time. I did so well.
Do you shoot film or just digital?
I have a good few amount of film cameras, but I tend to like digital cameras a little bit more, mostly because I am a cheapskate at heart.
Yeah.
And it's quite expensive to get them developed.
Yeah, Jaron.
What? I bought a ton of
I guess
film
it
in
doesn't-
Japan, and I spent like $400 on film, and that's just for the raw film. Then I have to go develop it, and that's also really expensive. So
This is what I recommend, Emily, is because I like this dynamic with Jaron and I, where I just got him to start really shooting a lot of analog, and then I get to live vicariously through his analog experiences, but I don't have to do any of the developing. I don't have to buy any of the film. I don't have to like do any of the weighting, the scanning, all that stuff. And he's like obsessed now. He's got a sickness, and it's great because it doesn't cost me anything. So it's wonderful.
You gave him.
yeah, you gave me this.
You're the
illness.
host monkey from Outbreak.
Isn't that how diseases work? It's kind of like, well, that was fun. See you later. Like, good luck with your life. So,
Well, that actually segues. So I'll go next because that segues well into my sickness. While we were in Aizu, Sigma's factory has like this showroom, as you mentioned, with all of their old stuff. There's one thing you didn't mention that was in that showroom.
no, I'm leaving that for you.
There's Sigma's first ever camera is called the Mark I or the Mark I. I don't know what do you think it is because it looks like an I. But
It's a Mark 1, I think.
I think it's a Mark 1.
They said Mark 1 when
Okay.
we were asking about it in the showroom.
There is no Mark II. So there's just a Sigma Mark 1. I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, I have to have it.
It's a beautiful camera.
So there's a thing that I like. And if you look at my FTN, it has like this real boxy, angular look to it. And I'm just like that. I love that aesthetic. And Sigma went away from that almost immediately with their next camera. So that was much more rounded, looked much more like, smooth or whatever. But the Mark 1 looks great. And so I held it. And then Chris was like, oh no. Jaron, don't rack that
You'll
film.
go blind. Put it
Jaron's
down.
trembling, his eyes rolling back in his head.
So I do that. I'm like,
man.
oh my God, this feels really nice. And then I find out that Sigma, apparently, I'm going to double check this, only made 2,000 of these in
Yeah, very rare.
1976. So I'm like, oh no, can I find one of these? And I look, I'm like, I can't find one of these. I spend the next few hours like digging around online, and I finally do find one. It's in Germany from like a German camera store. They won't ship to me. So I find Gordon Lang, who's been on the podcast before and who was with us in Japan, and we come to an agreement. He has purchased the camera for me. And then he's going to hand deliver it to me the next time we meet each other. And in exchange, I'm going to give him 2 cameras that I found here in the United States that he's going to use. So I purchased 2 cameras on eBay for him. Those should be here soon. And
Doing a tradesies.
They're weird. They're definitely cameras that'll exist on his Dinobytes channel.
Wow. Hopefully there's no customs officers watching this podcast right now. Don't worry about it.
Well, excuse me. I'm sure it's all fine. Anyway, these things are cheap. The thing that I'm excited to do with him though is I think he wants to do a Dinobytes video on the Mark 1. And I will contribute to that. So I'm going to do like a second half of actually like going out and shooting with it and getting samples and developing the film or whatever. So
that
that's
rocks.
hopefully the plan. But I'm very excited to own another film camera that I can wear with my...
and now collect M42 glass. I mean,
I
like,
got one.
It's just a disease, dude. You're...
I went down
like how
to
many glass showcases can you put in one basement? That's what I want to see. Like,
You're going to have to tear out some RGB lights there to make more showcase room.
yeah, throw the TV in the garbage because that's where the lenses go now.
So over the weekend, I acquired a Super Takumar 28mm f3.5 screw mount lens that I'm going to use on that.
It's
I'm
probably
a
garbage, but it's going to be cool. It's going to be cool looking.
I put it on a Pentax at the store and looked through it. It looks pretty sharp to me. So I'm kind of excited.
It's deceptive.
Fine. What have you been up to, Chris?
Yeah, Chris is being a bummer. That's what he's been up to this week.
Let me enjoy my stuff.
I'm trying to rein you in a little bit. You know what I mean? Like you're spiraling. I don't want to do an intervention. Anyways, I acquired something myself, which I never thought I would. Look at this GM5. Emily,
Yay.
You're not the only one now. So
my favorite. I have two.
Oh, of course you do. And probably like 10 GM1s. Oh my gosh. This is my favorite camera. I love this camera. I don't know why I sold it. I have this thing where for me, and Emily, we actually talked about this in Norway, Emily, you have this disease. I don't, where, I have this problem where if I have a camera and it's sitting not getting used, I feel really bad. Like I actually have an emotional issue with it. And so I sell it because I'm like, well, somebody should be using this camera because for me, it's just kind of sitting here. Now you have a museum, but you do actually use them. So that, there's that. I've just never been able to do that with cameras. I always want it to same with fishing rods. I just kind of they have to go and be used or else it drives me crazy. So anyways, long story short, I sold my GM5 and I regretted it. And I've always loved the photos that I got of this camera, the form factor, and especially nowadays we look at talk about smaller cameras and I'm telling Panasonic please make this again, please. Sean even said stop asking me, Chris.
He told me to stop as well.
He's like just it's not going to happen, just shut up. So anyways, just out of random chance, we were in the camera store picking up some supplies. KH was there. KH, of course, a sponsor of our show. They take in a lot of used gear from Calgary. They actually send people up to actually take used gear in person and bring it back down. And I see a friend of mine in line and I ask her what she's selling. And she's like, oh, well, I'm selling my GM5 and my GM1. And I was just like, this is fate. It has to happen. So I bought it from her right out of the lineup. Sorry, KH.
Scalped it from KH.
Scalped it from KH. And I took it to Tokyo, Japan, and it was heaven. It was heaven. Anyone
listening to this, Chris would not shut the F up about this camera. So we were there a day early because the flights were cheaper. So he and I just went out at 4 a.m, and then again later that day to some random
Kie
little suburb
Shrine, and we explored Akasaka. Yeah.
And Chris would take a picture and be like, God, I love this camera. Take another picture. This is the best camera ever made. Then he wonders God, I'm so happy. He was not responsible for shooting any other content those days. It was just simply Chris enjoying the world day. And good Lord.
That's a national holiday, by the way.
He would not shut up about that as much as I was not shutting up about enjoying shooting with the Bessa R2A. I was like, oh, this is great. I love these lenses. Because I'm using Thipoc lenses right now. It's just as a review. And I'm like, these are great. I'm having a great time. Chris is over there like, oh, this is great. I'm having a great time.
That's, as Emily said too, that's the joy of it, right? You're going to go take the OM3 and shoot in Valencia and it's just take photos because that's the whole point is just having that joy of shooting and enjoying the experience. So it is also the greatest camera ever on the planet. I feel like, and I'm serious, I feel like if somebody remade it, because Panasonic, I guess, won't, if somebody made something like this, though, it would do so well. And you've said that, Emily. Tom Kelton has said that many times. Anybody who touches GM5 is like, this is great.
Anyone who makes cameras, we were talking to people at CP Plus, Chris would find a way to bring this up and be like, you should make this. Here, and he just pulls that out of his bag. This is the perfect camera. Why don't you make a copy of this? Camera.
And just tiny lenses, and they're interchangeable, so you got creative choices, nice manual controls, still has an EVF. It's garbage EVF, 100% garbage EVF, field sequential. You're looking down a tunnel at your composition, but it's still infinitely better than nothing at all. And I just love how simple they are. But, here's something I want to put across to you, Emily, because you've shot a lot on it, okay? 16 megapixels, everything about this should suck, right? But there is something about the photos that come out of the GM1 and GM5 that just have this quality to them.
Je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, je ne sais quoi. And it's got sharpness. It's got beautiful color. There's a tonality to it. The metering is freaking fantastic. I don't know what it is.
He won't
it's
shut
a
up,
magic
guys.
sauce.
See, I told you, he's so happy.
It's magic sauce. I remember taking this camera to Hawaii. My wife and I went to Hawaii like 10 years ago, and this is all I took, and I had the best experience with it. And you have it everywhere. I don't know. Do you find that the photos are beautiful out of it?
Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, I am always amazed at how well these smaller sensors do. And that's like an older, like 10, 12 years old now, the GM5 maybe. And it's stunning. The detail, I think I took mine to Tromsø and it lost its little mind with the snow, and everything came out blue and underexposed. But the raw files just came out beautifully.
Yeah.
Like once I edited them, and even like the JPEG straight out of camera is so good. Yeah, it's my favorite camera, and it's one of those intangible things that camera manufacturers just can't they can't replicate it. It's like a camera either has the joyfulness or it doesn't, and I think that the GM5 is certainly one that does.
You know what's going to happen is someone's going to remake that, except the monkey's paw will curl and there will be no EVF on it.
That's what they're going to do, yeah. A cursed GM5 with all the good things removed.
All right, well, we're going to move on to Jordan here. Otherwise, Chris is just going to talk about this camera for another 30 minutes.
I'm going to make it quick.
I'm just going to play with it now while you talk.
I haven't like movie nerded out on the pod for a while. I've tried to avoid that a little bit, but for Valentine's, my wife got me the Sofia Coppola Archive coffee table book, which is like behind the scenes photos and essays and script notes and stuff from a bunch of her movies. So I bring this up because Chris has been going on about Lost in Translation over the last
he wants me to watch it.
week and change. Yeah, he watched it on the flight home. Jaron refuses to watch it out of what I can only assume is malice at this point.
Stop.
But if you're interested in like how creatives function on a set, I think it's brilliant, and it's pretty reasonable too. I think it's going for like $40 right now. And then the other one is while I was in Japan, they have different streaming movies. So I went to Criterion Channel. They've got every Kurosawa movie there streaming on Japanese Criterion. And I watched High and Low. And when people hear Kurosawa, they think samurai movies. He made 7 Samurais. He's made a whole bunch of those. I'm watching Throne of Blood right now as well. I am. Yeah, I started it last night. But High and Low is like a police procedural about like a kidnapping and that goes wrong. It's like a shoe salesman who's overly ambitious, and it doesn't sound like anything you would expect from him. And Jaron, I know that you like a good mystery. Like I was pitching, what was that called that was good to you? The series where they solve different case every week.
Detective? Oh, a different case
Law
a week.
and Order.
Oh, the one on Peacock.
Yeah.
It's got what's her face in it? The one from the.
We're doing a great job here. Anyways, Jaron, you would love this movie, guaranteed. So check it out.
I don't have the Criterion collection.
It's time. You know what? Maybe I'm just going to gift you a Criterion subscription.
Yeah, you need to watch it.
It'll work.
Stray
for
Dog
1 month.
Noda Inu is fantastic. What an amazing movie. Yojimbo is great. Sanjuro's hilarious as hell. Rashomon's an art film classic. I mean, it goes on and on. Yeah. And Throne of Blood. I love that Jordan's watching these now, and the only thing that drives me crazy is how you can start it and not finish it in one sitting. But anyways, that's besides the point.
I don't know how that works.
Throne of Blood is like if you're a photographer, Throne of Blood
beautiful.
Although Stray Dog, honestly, the photography in that too, mind blowing. Mind blowing. Amazing.
Before we get to the next 2 sections that are comments and tech support, there's one thing I forgot to do. I wanted to mention this before when we were talking about Sigma. Yes, thank you. Good job. Thank you, Chris.
That is a Rashomon poster for those listening. Chris is waving around now.
So what I'm going to show, this is not going to be helpful for those listening to audio only, and I apologize. You'll have to take my word for it. Yes. Okay. Thank you. 7 Samurai.
That's a 7 Samurai poster.
I wanted to point out Sigma's new branding, like their boxes, because I don't think this got enough attention. Yes, Chris is still showing.
That's Ikiru, the poster from Ikiru.
If you look, this is something worth checking out if you're in New York at that pop-up. I'm sure they'll have them. The boxes and the packaging that Sigma's doing for their new products is freaking gorgeous. This is just one example of a box that they did.
It's very nice.
This is a very small box, so this is just going to give you an idea of just the texture in the paper. But like they have different colored boxes for like different things. So like you'll get a green one that's like a really good green, or like they're these deeper, not pastels, which I quite like a lot. And the other thing they did too is they gave us these catalogs or these brochures, really, that the paper mix that they're using is just the nicest thing. Like they are really quite beautiful.
They promoted the hell of it because I think this is like a big rebranding.
Yeah, huge rebranding. And it's essentially like refinement is what I would, the one word to describe what they've done.
The first thing I noticed on the BF, the second thing I noticed besides the gleaming body design, it was the old font. It was like looking at their Sigma lenses from the 80s. I was like, oh, I recognize this slightly serifed font.
It's a little more refined, a little cleaner.
Bit more sophisticated.
Yeah, sophisticated. Yeah. So like, I mean, the paper and the attention to detail and everything is just so nice. So if you have a chance just to appreciate the branding, I like good marketing. This is good marketing.
It's no GM5 though.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We have a few comments that I wanted to get to in the section called Never Read the Comments, which we encourage folks to never read the comments, but we do that anyway.
We blabbed.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time left. So what we're going to do is I got an email. So this is technically not a comment, but it fits better here than in tech support from Cameron. Hi, chaps. I'm a useless peanut who has only just found you all on PetaPixel, followed on various previous incarnations. Is there any way I can support you all through Patreon or anything? Just back into photography through seeing the Wildlife Photographer of the Year at the Natural History Museum in London. Just got a Nikon Z6 III. My wife has delved into the Sony offerings, a Sony a7 IV. Not a real question, just how to pop over and some support and appreciation.
It's very nice, Cameron.
Just so you know, I did respond to Cameron directly in an email and told him that there is a way that you can support Chris and Jordan directly. And it's through a PetaPixel membership. He responded to that he did sign up. So thank you, Cameron. Fantastic. But I just wanted to share this with anyone else. If you want to support Chris and Jordan directly, that's the best way to do it.
From a pointless walnut to a useless peanut, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you very much.
All right, we got a couple questions from I pulled some from some of the recent videos from Zeiss. Sean Tomlinson on YouTube says, for that Zeiss lens, that Loca seems inexcusable at this price. Then the issues at the corners at f1.4, this isn't living up to the Otis name. Disappointing. We talked to Zeiss at CP Plus, and they seemed a little bit unprepared for this response, from people saying that this wasn't quite what they were expecting from Zeiss. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't tell you either. I mean, these are pre-production lenses and stuff, but Loca's not going to change from that. They're very interesting lenses. They're very well corrected lenses where they're not doing digital correction. They're doing, optical correction, old school style. And so in that regard, you can respect them, and they certainly have character. There's lots of nice qualities about them. But yeah, this seems to be the kind of response, not just from us, but I think a lot of reviewers are saying the same thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, you'd buy an Otis and be like, look, I know I'm giving up autofocus, and it's $4,000 per lens, and they're huge and incredibly heavy, but you're getting the best optical performance that you could get on full frame at the time.
It's a different field
now. First-party lenses are just so good at this point. It's a different game altogether.
Everybody's lenses are good at this point. You can't really go head and shoulders above what people are doing right now. It just doesn't really work because they're already so good.
The next two are from the Sigma BF preview video, the launch video. Raphael Unplugged says, "Damn boys, are you using the reflection off a building for this shot?" Referring to the intro shot.
People lost the number of what camera is this? How are you grading this? How is this
3D
possible?
pop.
It's a giant silver building. You're going to get perfect balanced light off of it that looks incredibly fake. And it's still pretty.
I loved it. Great. Yeah, we're glad that you enjoyed it. Turns out Sigma makes their headquarters the exact same way they make their BF camera. They just machine it out of pure aluminum.
It was one giant block size.
Just giant silver block.
What's super funny is the response to this was Jordan walked back in with Chris after shooting this. He's like, people are going to say we're not here. It looks like a green screen. So he already knew it was going to look funny. So I knew
it was going to look weird.
Yeah, but people liked it. So weird is good. Emily, I actually want to get your take on this. This is a comment from ACM 9407. I don't care if this ends up being a huge success or a complete failure. Yeah, the BF. I just appreciate the fact that they're trying to do something different and be innovative. The camera industry has been extremely stagnant and painfully complacent when it comes to innovation and technological progress. So it's refreshing to see someone finally shake things up. Super excited to see where this leads.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I think like having something like the X100 series of cameras where people just have like an excitement to use it. That's what I like the look of with the BF, where it looks a little bit different and they are doing something completely different. I think, any flagship camera is the same style, more or less. The internals might change, but I think a lot of like high-end cameras to me are more like tools for a job rather than something that sparks joy.
Yeah.
And I think the BF might spark joy. Hopefully.
For a lot of people. Might not for others, but for some people it might really resonate with them. And I think that was the goal that Kazuto was going for, is just like for certain people, he just wants them to have fun. So
we haven't talked about this on the pod, but we should point out that the BF is our second biggest camera launch since
video-wise?
at PetaPixel. Yeah, in terms of views in a short period of time.
I actually think it's first.
So people are craving something like really interesting, even if very few of them are actually going to buy this. They're curious, and I think that's awesome.
Well, our full review is coming out very soon, so you'll definitely want to watch that, because
that's why my eyes look like this.
It's actually possible. It's possible, no promises, that it came out before this podcast, but it'll be in the same week, we hope.
It's
unless Jordan,
unquestionably this week,
falls asleep or something. Last comment is on Viltrox. This one's for you, Chris. This one's from Christopher Bonus. What is Chris's favorite focal length, then, referring to the fact that you're being forced to shoot 35?
Put a video on this.
Yeah. Yes. It's simple. 85 mil. An 85 mil full frame equivalent for me would be my like go-to lens if I had to pick one, right? I feel like I can shoot a 70 to 85 as more of a normal lens as well. Like instead of a 50, I'm happy to use that, but I also like it for portraits. I like that you can easily make that focal length quite bright if you want to. So yeah, I love it. That would be my favorite focal length.
Emily, what's your favorite focal length?
Oh, for street photography, I like a 40 mil equivalent. So 20 mil on Micro Four Thirds.
Yeah.
Jordan and I are in agreement that it's 35, although I've been getting a taste of 28 lately, and I like
28's way better.
28.
28's the superior choice. 100%.
No one makes 28 lenses though. So
I know.
I'm sorry.
What is up with
so
that?
Weird.
Only Kaipak is making them. All right, here we go. Tech support now. We'll get through as many of these as we can in the next few minutes. The first one is an email from Felix. Hi, Chris, Jordan, and Jaron. My name is Felix, and I am one person of the 4.6% under 25-year-old viewers of your channel, and probably one of 5 under 20 years old.
You did your research. Well done.
Appreciate it. So my general question is, what do you think is to be expected from an R7 Mark II, and when do you guys think it will come out? There's a lot of context here as to saying why he's asking that question, but I think that's the question. Yeah.
We appreciate you watching. Thank you for being in that age group that we do not necessarily get a lot of from, so we appreciate that. We don't know when an R7 II is going to come out. I mean, there's a lot of talk that it might be later this year, but the original R7 is a fantastic, capable camera. I actually found I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would for exactly what you're talking about, sports and wildlife and stuff. I don't know, Jordan, what do you think they're going to change if they do that? Faster sensor readout, electronic shutter only? I don't know.
Yeah, that's my concern, because it's pretty close. Like, it's one generation behind Canon's current autofocus, and usually they wait until there's a bigger, 2 or 3 generations before they update a model. And as well, like, we've heard before, like, APS-C mirrorless is struggling a little bit. I don't know if they're going to be developing, like, a brand new sensor for that series of camera, which they'd have to do at the same time. And then also, like, Canon's mirrorless offerings are, getting down there in price. You've got cameras like that R8 that's very close to the R7. So I almost wonder if they're just going to let that stagnate for a while. But at the same point, there's third-party lens manufacturers making APS-C lenses now. So the R7 is now a much more capable camera than it was when it launched, when I was like, what the hell am I putting on this thing? So now there's actually options. So, but all the same, that just makes the R7 a great offer. It doesn't mean it needs a brand new body.
Yeah. I have to say, though, my favorite thing here is at the end, Felix says, "Thank you in advance and greetings from Austria, not the one with kangaroos," which means Felix may have heard our story about being in Cologne and meeting some very lovely but very drunk Austrian boys. And they had to explain to us, assuming, I guess, that we were ignorant Americans or something, that we didn't know that Austria is not the country with kangaroos. It's the one that borders Germany.
Kangaroos.
Yeah. So we are from Austria, not Australia. And like, yes, we understand. We're not the ones that had 3 liters of beer prior to this conversation. Anyways, they were lovely boys, and I'll never forget them.
We know it was 3 liters. They made that very clear to us as well. No kangaroos, 3 liters of beer. Those are the only things we know about those gentlemen. I hope they're doing well.
So Felix, if you heard that story before, kudos to you, because that's fantastic. Or maybe it's just an Austrian thing to tell everybody that you don't have kangaroos.
Or he ran into us at Photokina 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, no, because that Felix is under 20. I mean, these guys are probably like 36 now. But that was hilarious.
So this next one we've discussed before. So I think I want Emily to answer this one, and it's a speak pipe. So let's listen to Sebastian.
Hello, PetaPixel team. My name is Sebastian, and recently here in Germany, I've seen a huge rise on the point-and-shoot cameras, as well as the premium compact cameras, such as the Ricoh GRs, the Fuji X100 lineup, and as well as the Leica Qs. And that made me think, why camera brands such as Olympus, well, now OM System, they don't release cameras that like they're all film cameras, but digitally, like, for example, the Olympus stylus. I think they have different names regarding where you are, as well as the digital the Olympus Strip 35, but all of the digital cameras, as well as, for example, Canon could release the Canon Canonet, which I think it was an amazing camera.
Yes.
I would love to see that, because Olympus could do that and keep the small form factor by making the camera take the EM5 Mark II batteries and just give it a micro SD port, and that would be the camera. Your thoughts? Because I've also seen that you guys also love the point-and-shoot cameras.
Oh yeah, that would be music to my ears. I think like the OM System OM3 is somewhat like that. It's very modelled around the older analog cameras, but having a more affordable, like a lower spec point and shoot sort of thing with a retro look. That would be so cool. Like, do you ever feel like we say this over and over and over again, and camera manufacturers just go, they're just weird. They're not saying what everyone wants, but I think everyone wants, unless I'm in a bubble.
You're not in a bubble.
We had a meeting with OM, and I just wanted to grab them by the shoulders and shake them. You're so close. It's right there.
We have so many articles coming out in the next few weeks, which we'll talk about on the podcast for sure, from interviews with these camera companies. And to spoil my own results, do not get so excited that thinking that they'll finally listen to us, because I didn't get that sense from basically anyone.
No. Me standing, like we're sitting there in front of this panel of Canon executives who were very lovely, but intimidating. And I had the audacity to suggest like a Canon QL17 would be fantastic. You know what I mean? Like a digital QL17, QL19, I think would do really well. And of course, they find that very interesting. And of course, we're not the only ones to be telling them that. But at the same time, they basically said, like, Canon is really a forward-thinking company. And our attention is going towards the future and not looking in the past. So, that doesn't bode well as far as Emily and my dreams coming true, or Sebastian's for that matter.
All right. Last one before the feel-good story. This is from the S1R II video. I thought this would just be a quick answer from Lofot. Can you explain why Lofot? Can you explain why
they've responded to us before, which is
have
great.
they?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you explain why a stacked sensor has an effect on dynamic range? The extra RAM is below the sensor, so I don't see why there should be less light reaching each pixel. Different on global shutter. Globs. I forgot there should be an A there. Different on global shutter, of course, where the extra circuitry is required to quickly block the light while reading out the sensor. So, can you explain why stacked is bad for dynamic range?
So we've asked about this, and it does really seem to be basically they're tweaking the sensor to optimize readout in any way possible. And we're seeing the same thing with a lot of conventional BSIs where they're like, look, we'll drop the bit depth for faster readout when it's necessary. But they're doing that at the initial design of the sensor. And we've heard, like, eventually, hopefully stacked sensors are going to be at DR parity with a conventional BSI. We're just not there. And it doesn't seem to be an issue of the actual circuitry taking up so much room that it's limiting the amount of light coming in there. It doesn't seem to be impacting like where that sensor saturates. So this is one of those like, look, we're going to have to wait and see for it to get a bit better. Where I think the design of a modern global shutter means there's always going to be a DR hit with those that kind of design. We saw that on all of the movie cameras leading up to this. But yes, I think stacked is just going to keep on getting better.
Yeah. And again,
it's still relatively new.
Yeah, and to give it context too, I mean, we're often talking about 2/3 of a stop. I mean, it's not like the end of the world. It's pretty minor differences. If you do have a mechanical shutter camera that shoots electronic shutter, you'll often see this reflected in a bit rate drop when you go to electronic shutter as well. But yeah, it's I agree with Jordan. It's something I think is going to become ubiquitous as soon as the prices start coming down on stacked. It's still expensive to put stacked sensors in cameras, and so that's really kind of your biggest barrier to seeing these more often.
Yeah, like remember, Emily just got the least expensive stacked sensor photo camera, which is $2,000, and everybody flipped out about the price when this came out. Those sensors aren't cheap.
Yeah, the OM3, yeah. I think people really overlook the fact that it is a stacked sensor with the incredible burst modes. Like, I think it's good for the price. Do I wish they'd have just made a Pen F? Yes, but I'll have an OM3.
Yeah.
Well,
I love that camera.
Because I
really love that camera.
We asked that question of OM System, so I'll have an update on that in the coming weeks. All right. I'm going to end the podcast with the feel-good story of the week. On March 1st, 3 days ago as of our recording, the Leica 1 turned 100 years old. It was developed in 1913, but shown to the public for the first time 100 years ago this month at the Leipzig Spring Fair. This camera would go on to revolutionize 35mm photography. I hereby decide we will take this risk, Ernst Leitz II said in 1925 when he decided to mass produce that camera, the famed this version of Oscar Barnack's Leica invention. Despite technical challenges in difficult economic times, a completely new camera system was added to the Leitz factory production range. The launch of the Leica 1 at the Leipzig Fair also proved to be a visionary and decisive business move. The Leitz booth number 194, 195 on the upper level of the fair hall acted as a springboard for a revolution in photography in 1925. So that's super neat. 100-year-old 35mm camera would go on. This would be a revolution in photography. So I thought that was neat.
I think they should launch more cameras at fairs. Like, I think if Sigma was like, it's our winter fair, that would be amazing. Just throw a Ferris wheel out front. I mean, maybe that's why we were in Tokyo for a little bit there. But yeah, it is very cool. I think we always just look at the camera models when we're talking about old Leicas. But yeah, this is the point where it actually hit the public and popularized the standard that we still call it full frame. It's the default standard. So that's cool as hell.
Thanks, 35mm movie industry.
Well, that'll do it for us.
Thanks,
Emily.
Technicolor.
Thanks, Technicolor. We'll miss you.
This is supposed to be the feel-good story. Anyway, Emily, thank you for joining us on the PetaPixel Podcast. It was lovely having you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. Anytime. I'm always down to chat with you guys. It's so much fun.
How about next time we see another Micro Four Thirds camera, you come on and chat with us about it?
Yeah.
I'm
sorry
so
we were
up for
such
that.
bummers.
Yeah, and just a quick reminder, Emily is Micro Four Nerds on YouTube. So definitely give her a subscription. It took me way too long to find her channel, so hopefully this tips you all off.
Yeah, all right. And with that, we're going to call it. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you all next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Go get dinner, Emily.